I posted a segment, an article on the human rights press conference we had held on Friday on LinkedIn, and it got cancelled. I myself have been cancelled on YouTube from the get-go, and ever since then it's been impossible to interview me, so good luck with this. This is an international crisis. You know, what we're seeing is a sort of an end game playing out, and the whole system is about to come down. So it really is up to us to step up now and stand up for truth and justice and actually protect our children. I would say it's probably not possible to come out a good doctor. I think the way the medicine system is structured is really just to make technicians follow the big pharma's orders.
Good morning, Dr. Tess.
Good morning, Tammy. Thank you for having me on your show.
My pleasure. So let's see now. How did I get in touch with you? I interviewed Dr. Trozy. Maybe that was how I got into. Yes, I think he pointed me in your direction, and so then I looked you up on the web, Dr. Tess Lawrie, and saw all kinds of videos, and I thought, oh my goodness, you're doing your best to get your message out, and so I was very happy to help in that regard. So I think we could just start. You could introduce yourself because you could do a much better job than I can, and tell people what you've been up to generally, and then I'll ask you some questions.
Thanks. Well, I'm a medical doctor and a researcher, a mother of three, and I grew up in South Africa. I studied in South Africa. I did research and clinical work in South Africa, and then I relocated to the United Kingdom in 2009 with my fairly young family at that time. And so I continued doing mainly research-focused work, and I set up a company called the Evidence-Based Medicine Consultancy Limited, which was a small research company that did a lot of work for the World Health Organization, preparing clinical practice guidelines. And also I still have an honorary position with the Royal United Hospital here in my hometown of Bath, where I prepare evidence for, they're called Cochrane reviews, for various review groups. So my work is very much engaged with evaluating bodies of evidence, and I've done this for the WHO since 2012. So when COVID came along, I was very concerned because the policies being promoted by the World Health Organization and governments around the world that seem to be in lockstep with each other were not evidence-based. Not the masks, not the lockdowns, not the COVID-19 injections that they were calling vaccines, but they weren't proper vaccines. They were actually genetic therapies, which anyone who knew biology and had a background in research could see quite clearly, and there wasn't the evidence to support their use, just doing a cursory glance of the available literature. And then, of course, it was clear that there were safe old established medicines, very safe medicines, that could have been used to help people with COVID symptoms early on and late in disease, and these were not being recommended to the public. And so there was one particular medicine called ivermectin, which you may be aware of. Mm-hmm. It's an old established medicine that's been used billions of times for parasitic diseases, but it has been tested for a wide range of different diseases, including many viruses and also cancer. So it was a sort of obvious go-to, and many countries started using it, especially developing countries, because they probably were aware they weren't going to get the vaccines for a while, plus people needed treatment. Vaccines don't treat disease, they're only supposed to prevent it. And so the doctors looked in their tool bags and they said, oh, we've got this, let's try it, and it was working. And there were many studies that were done at that time. So I did a review, like I did my usual job. I looked at it, looked at the evidence and evaluated it, and it was quite clear that this would be a useful medicine for people with COVID symptoms. But it became very difficult to get the message out about this. So I did, I sent a review to the World Health Organization. We held a meeting in February 2021 where we evaluated the evidence in a broader group with more experts than just myself, and came to the conclusion that ivermectin would actually reduce deaths and most likely have a big impact on the COVID symptoms and disease. And so it should be used for both prevention and treatment. And when we sent this information to the FDA, we sent it to the Canadian authorities as well. We sent it to UK authorities and South African, the whole, as far and wide as we could, and our resources allowed. And we had no joy. We saw no change in the policies. And so I, for all intents and purposes, at that point became a humanitarian, and I stopped the work that I was doing, all other work, and I just threw myself into this messaging role of trying to get help to people and trying to make them aware that there were things they could do. They didn't have to wait till they turned blue and call an ambulance. There were many things they could do, including getting sunshine, vitamin D, C, zinc, to counter symptoms and reduce the risk of severe disease from COVID. And also, of course, at the same time, because I was monitoring the World Health Organization's pharmacovigilance database, which is called VigiBase or VigiAccess, and I could see that even in January 2021, the COVID injections, what they were calling vaccines, were causing tremendous harm or being associated with tremendous harm, because I was monitoring ivermectin in terms of safety because it was being widely used for COVID, and the data hardly changed. And in actual fact, since 1992, on the VigiAccess database or VigiBase, they have about 26 deaths to date associated potentially with ivermectin and 7,000 adverse events, whereas with the COVID vaccines, in January 2021, there were already 80,000 adverse event reports. Now it's over 5 million. And far more attributed deaths. Right now, it's way over 50,000 deaths on the World Health Organization's database. So they were saying nothing about this. So I was monitoring that, and obviously halfway through the year, it was clear there was significant issues with corruption. There was significant issues with these conditional approvals of the genetic injections, and people weren't being told. So, there was this building. Well, what can we do? So we formed a group called the British Ivermectin Recommendation Development Group, and that was to get the message out about ivermectin. And although it was called British, it was an international group. We had representatives from at least 15 countries, and within this group, we realized we actually needed a bigger platform. So we thought, well, let's form a council for health. And it ended up, the final name ended up being the World Council for Health, even though we were just a handful of representatives from different countries. We had the group that we'd already formed, and all of those organizations that were part of BIRD became World Council for Health for all intents and purposes. And we started with a COVID care guide. I'll just show you here. At-home COVID care guide, and it was downloaded millions of times. We also, in the December 2021, we launched a cease and desist notice to stop people from promoting and administering the COVID-19 genetic injections. But at that time, it was far too early for people to, people were subjected to such brainwashing and fear about COVID and brainwashing about the safe and effective, that they, it was very hard to reach people on the vaccine front. And sadly, many people, billions of people, have been subjected to a very experimental therapy.
Yeah. Wow, eh? Wow.
So I can keep talking. I mean, it's just been,
what a journey.
It's been a massive amount of work, and the team has grown exponentially, and our scope of work has grown exponentially, because it was quite clear then that COVID wasn't about a deadly pandemic. It's actually about concentration of power and establishment of a new world order.
Holy man. Now, I have questions, but I'm also, who do you think is spearheading this? Or is there someone spearheading this? Like what kind of an organization is putting this forward as a good idea or a necessary idea for the world to adhere to this new order?
Tammy, what's become apparent is that our governments aren't in control. They're sort of, you know, they're the enforcer layer.
Mm-hmm.
You could call them the jam in the middle, making sure that we all adhere. So what I've learned over the last few years is that it's the banks that are in control of everything. The Bank of International Settlements is basically driving everything. They control the money, and we live in a very money-orientated world.
Mm-hmm. I've come to realize that, yes,
Yeah.
that our highest value is money.
It has been, but
It
that is
has
changing.
been. It has
It
to
has been.
change.
Yeah,
Yes.
that is changing now, as we realize that money cannot be our goal. We have to place human values
Yes.
as our goals. But so how we have in this hierarchical system that is now on its way out is we have the Bank of International Settlements at the top, and then we have the policy makers. So these are the so-called think tanks like the World Economic Forum, the Rockefeller Foundation, Chatham House, the Club of Rome. These are all many sort of not necessarily secret societies, but they're globalist organizations that are seeking ultimate control of humanity, and they exploit us to their own ends, and they have enormous power because they control the media, they control food, they control the money systems, and so they're the ones making the policies that suit them best, that suit the production of money. And dead entities. Corporation stands for means a dead entity. So we have dead entities ruling human beings right now. And then we have the policy distributors. Now that's where the World Health Organization and the United Nations come in. They're just policy distributors. And they're not making the policies. So one might be thinking the World Health Organization is a terrible organization, we must stop it, which we are doing, but we need to realize that they're not really in control in any way. They're just the policy distributors. And then our governments are the layer beneath that, and they are the policy enforcers. So they are just there to make sure that we do what we're told. And all around the world, and over a period of many decades, they've been infiltrated infiltrated and corrupted, because it's all about money and power. So they no longer, if they ever did serve the public. In actual fact, they're very much enforcing and giving us fines for things and introducing new laws that limit us and restrict us and harm us. And they employ propagandists to do this, to keep us all compliant, and this is and this is on a military scale level with psychological operations, psyops, and these teams that they employ on social media and Twitter to nudge us and so on. So. With a system where there is not free access to information, the information ecology is totally skewed in favor of the powerful. I mean, I posted a segment, an article on the Human Rights Press Conference we had held on Friday on LinkedIn, and it got cancelled because it violated community guidelines. I myself have been cancelled on YouTube from the get-go. The very first time I ever posted anything on YouTube was in January 2021, just to, it was a short video to the Prime Minister of the UK, just to say, don't worry, we have a solution to COVID symptoms, it's ivermectin, and please contact me, because I hadn't had a response from his office. and that video got taken down. And ever since then, it's been impossible to interview me. So good luck with this, because
Well, there'll be, it might not go out on every platform, but I think that there'll be. I have a number of different platforms, so we'll see.
But anyway, so at the bottom of this big heap is the public, who basically is kept compliant and fearful and pays for the whole thing.
Right, right. Yes, in more ways than one. Pays for it in
Yes,
more ways than
yes.
one. Let's see, what can I ask you about? I think because you're the CEO of a number of different. I was looking at all the different platforms. You have the Better Life,
The Better Way conferences.
Better
I
Way.
can tell you how it's all sort of unfolded. It's all the same
Okay.
thing. So
Mm-hmm.
you could call the work that we're doing the Better Way Project, because there's a better way for health, freedom, and sovereignty.
Mm-hmm.
And people might think, well, an organization called the World Council for Health is just about health.
Right.
But really, we are about creating a better way for the entire, it's the whole picture. You cannot have health without freedom and the freedom to choose and fund your inalienable rights and sovereignty. You cannot be healthy if you are being threatened with, pandemics and injections and climate change restrictions or climate agenda restrictions, I should say. So we are really the Better Way Project is a counter to not just the World Health Organization, to this whole new world order. The WEF, it's a counter to the Great Reset.
Mm-hmm.
So the Better Way project includes World Council for Health, and it includes the Great Reset, which is really about empowering people to know their rights, to understand the threats that have been brought on us by this increased surveillance and digitalization. They're messing around with our food, and these documents that are busy being signed on our behalf to give the WHO the power to declare pandemics and public health emergencies willy-nilly.
What are they doing to mess around with our food, do you think?
They're doing plenty. There's the mRNA technology is being used for vaccinating animals as well. So it's getting into the food supply. There's a whole fake food industry, as if products like Coca-Cola and all these very sugary foods and long life foods is not enough. They're actually manufacturing what they're calling meat out of tissue that actually is like cancerous tissue. Basically, it just multiplies of its own accord. So there is this desire to, with the threat of what they say, climate change, that we need sustainable sorts of food supply. So you have individuals like Bill Gates buying up farms and land, and then creating food factories instead, where this where products that are not well tested to be safe for human beings and don't have all the natural ingredients that we need, organic ingredients, are being produced. So there is this idea that we should be eating crickets, and and that will be good for the planet and more sustainable.
Yeah.
But it's clearly not, and it's certainly not good for us. At the heart of a better way is really the human being, and if we have healthy and sovereign human beings, that is really the foundation stone of a healthy world and a better world. So our focus is on really getting individuals healthy and sovereign, and they will then create a better way for their communities and their countries, and this is how we counter dystopia.
And so then it's up to the people at the local level to do what they can to take care of all the issues that are necessary to sustain their communities.
Yes, yeah, and we are a grassroots organization, and non-hierarchical. So we really are messengers. So we're messaging to people we're receiving information from our grassroots partners, other organizations, and we have a range of organizations, from organizations that are focused on activism, freedom activism, to health activism, to we have media organizations, we have even police organizations in Canada that are partnered with us. They all have their own angle on things and their own expert perspective.
Mm-hmm.
We are able to give those organizations a voice and to share those organizations ideas and expertise across our international network. But we are, in ourselves, far from being the experts on things. It's really about, the way forward is really about learning from one another and sharing that information across the world network. And, for example, we have a very strong Asia partner group, and there's such expertise that has been in Asia from a health point of view and medicine's point of view for centuries, and we were able to bring that forward and highlight it to other country groups. So at the moment we have over 230 partner organizations in our grassroots coalition, and those partners are spread out over 55 countries. And we're in the process of now decentralizing the World Council for Health to country councils, so that each country can have their own council. We have a World Council for Health Canada on the way, and that is also then drawn from those aligned organizations who can see that a better way is needed and can unite, and show solidarity and collaborate with one another to bring forward an organization, World Council for Health Country Council, that then is responsible for its own country policies, empowering health and sovereignty, establishing new integrated systems, not just health systems, but education systems, lawful systems, and so on.
Yes, because our education system and our law system in Canada are both compromised terribly. They're not following precedent anymore in terms of law. So you can't be sure if you go to court, whether, even if you have a good case, whether precedent will be the reason that is used in the final analysis. And in education, well, of course, the universities are compromised, so the teachers are compromised. So what they're teaching the kids is not simple learning of arithmetic and literature and ethics and science. It's not that anymore. It's virtue signaling that we should be wary of really groups of people that we're harming. Really, that's what it's all about. Who are we harming, right? Who are we harming? And for little children to put their heads in that space means that they have absolutely no agency in their lives.
Yes, it's not just happening in Canada. This is an international crisis. All governments are behaving in the same way, and what we're seeing is a sort of an end game playing out, because it's been decades where our systems have been infiltrated. I often use the example of the death watch beetle, which is a borer beetle that gets into wood. And we're at a stage now where in all of our institutions we have the borer beetle, and it's really been working on the inside for such a long time, and the whole system is about to come down. So it really is up to us to step up now and stand up for truth and justice and actually protect our children. You mentioned the education system, and the children are so vulnerable, and the methods of indoctrination are so sophisticated that I believe it really is a time where one has, if you have young children in school, it's really a time to consider very carefully as to whether or not you should leave them there, because it's I believe that it's really dangerous to them. It's really risky to be in school right now with the level of indoctrination that is going on.
So homeschooling would be the best option then?
Definitely.
Yeah.
I know many people don't have that option. You have to work but this is, if there was ever a time to reconsider everything that you think everything you think you've been doing for the best and the good of your children, the good of your family, now's the time to reconsider all of that.
Yeah.
This is the time of really evaluating and working on what has been spoiled and taking some very definite steps to change the way we are being in this world.
Well, one thing I was thinking was that like-minded individuals at the level of the school with children who have friends in the same school, if they can band together, then each of them could take a day a week to teach the kids. So then they wouldn't have to go to the school system, and they wouldn't have to not have a job. They could take one day a week and be the teacher. And actually, kids are very, if you can set it up so that you have stations that they can be learning from, they don't need a lot of guidance. They only need guidance when they're in trouble and can't figure out how to solve problems. But kids, they're so inquisitive that they're finding solutions all the time that the teachers aren't even thinking of. So really what it is presenting, I think, presenting options for them to learn from, and then following what they're interested in.
Yeah, letting them exactly do the things that they really enjoy so that they can innovate and create and teach us things.
Yeah.
There's so much we can learn from children, and if they are just allowed to do what really interests them instead of I think of school really as a prison. Certainly when I was there, it felt that way, and that seems to just be getting worse and worse. And it's so limiting. You have to learn these. Everyone has to learn exactly the same thing. Where is the space for genius and creativity if everybody's just got to learn the same stuff? And we do know that what we know, certainly in the science areas, and that is just a teeny fraction of what there is to know. And yet, instead of allowing children to go off and learn, pursue an area of interest and come back and teach us, we insist on bringing everything down to the lowest common denominator and making sure that there are limits to ceilings to creativity.
But there's you and I who are, grandmother age, and we can see this. We can see this, and we can see that this would be a new beginning and a good idea to put this in. But the young people, I don't know if they can see it. Have you seen?
No, I think unfortunately, particularly particularly young people, they've, and I find I'm complicit in this as a mother, are not realizing the dangers of the education system or the mobile phone technology. And so basically, we handed over our children to others. We outsourced their education and well-being to others. And what we're facing now is the consequence. And the fact that so many, the majority of university school children have been injected with the toxic COVID-19 genetic therapies is extremely worrying, because it in all likelihood will impact fertility, it will impact health, and not just physical health, but mind health, mental well-being, and we're still in a position where we're unable to influence or intervene and help them because they have been weaned in the system, focused on money, so they've gotten going into that system where they have a massive debt, where they have to get a mortgage and get a job and get into, and they are still constantly attached to the mobile phones, which of course have huge health risks of their own. which again is one of those things that is very difficult to communicate. So not only do we have this unregulated medical technology in the form of these genetic injections, which are in the guise of vaccines, but we have this unregulated digital technology. Both industries seem to be regulated by the industries themselves. So there's no regulation; it's just promotion, and so that particular group is in great danger. And we see it. We certainly see the statistics on mind health. We so many young people on antidepressant drugs. They're not antidepressants. They're extremely dangerous, addictive drugs, and young people can't get off them. We see many young people who have been affected by the genetic therapies. Last Friday, we held a press conference in Geneva. I said I would speak a little bit about that, but one of the experiences that was shared at the press conference was really just, how do you discuss the human rights violations during COVID? It's so numerous, but we had a couple of testimonies, and the one was of a mother, Canadian mum, whose beautiful 17-year-old daughter, full of the joys of life, took vaccinations to go on a school trip, and within weeks she died in a most horrendous, most horrible manner, having 3 cardiac arrests and virtually losing all clotting in her limbs.
Yes. I've been watching John Campbell and the autopsy results showing very long white clotting, that they can't even embalm bodies because there's so much clotting that they've never seen in bodies before, that they can't even get the embalming fluid in bodies.
Yes, the clots are very strange. So this is what we've been exploring, is what is it actually in these injections. It's certainly nothing we've ever seen before. It's not a technology we've seen before, and those white clots are not, they're not normal, human.
Is it fat tissue, the clots?
It's not fat, no. They seem to be, the funeral director, John O'Looney, he actually gave a testimony at the Human Rights Violations Conference last week as well. He says they're more like calamari. They're very sort of tough and difficult to. There have been. I have seen an analysis of the contents, and it is not akin to a normal clot. I can't sprout the details here, but there are serious questions raised about what that material is.
Right.
And the scientists coming forward with answers are not being given the airtime either, So one of the things that really is needed is a delegation, an independent scientific delegation to the WHO to really have them listen to what we are seeing, both from a statistical point of view, but also in a very practical way with experiences shared.
Now, you had a video that you did when you first, because you weren't working in the COVID area of the WHO. You had a different mandate. What was your mandate originally?
I worked with the reproductive health department. So my area was always been in obstetrics and gynecology, and that was an area I really loved. And when COVID came along, I just applied the methodology. Evidence synthesis is not something that is restricted to one area or another. It's a methodology, that's a research methodology that can be applied to any area. So for World Health Organization, I was in the reproductive health department, but for other work I actually just finished a series on brain tumors, and there was sort of 5 Cochrane reviews on brain tumors using the methodology. And so, when COVID came along, I didn't have the contacts in the WHO really to, although I emailed the team with the evidence, it wasn't my area as such.
Now, what the video you did when you talked to Dr. Andrew Hill, did you know him?
No, I didn't know him, but I'd been introduced to him by Dr. Pierre Corey. So Dr. Andrew Hill, it didn't seem like he'd done a Cochrane review before. And when I heard that he was the consultant to do the systematic review on ivermectin, I offered to help. And I said, well, why don't you work with our team, because we have great experience collectively, and we can do the review together. And then he'd been hired by Unitaid and WHO, and he'd been working on it for some months. But before we could get started with a Cochrane-style review, he published his work on a preprint server, and it was very flawed. And although he found a 75% reduction in deaths, he concluded that ivermectin couldn't be recommended. The regulatory agencies couldn't recommend it until more trials were needed. And this was at a time when many, many people were said to would be dying from COVID, and it was a safe old medicine. So it didn't make any sense. Why would he kick it down the line and say more trials are needed when people needed help so desperately, and there was no harm in giving it a go? And so I had a conversation with him, and I didn't quite understand why he'd published the review on a preprint server when it wasn't ready. It was very flawed. The methodology was poor. It was really a poor paper. And so I contacted him on the Sunday. I read it on the weekend. I contacted him and I said, please retract it and let's meet, and discuss, and redo it. I said, this is going to cause immeasurable harm if you leave it. And so we met the next day. He agreed to meet, but he refused to retract it. And I recorded the conversation I had with him, which I'm sure he could have been aware of, because there's the light that flashes, on the screen. And I was just shocked to hear him just blasé sort of say, well, yes, just 6 weeks and then we'll publish. And I said, well, how many people are dying every day? And he said 15,000, and he sort of shrugged. And so that really made me realize the corruption, because then I subsequently found out that his university had been given millions by Unitaid to develop long-acting injectables.
What's Unitaid?
I thought it was a sort of charitable organization. It's an NGO, and it is supported by Bill Gates, and so it has links to very influential businessmen,
right?
And also that the University of Liverpool had received $40 million to develop these injectables. So medicines like ivermectin could be made into an injection instead of a pill. A tablet costs 3 cents to develop.
Right.
But there's an interest in developing these long-acting products. Because I think, of course, then they are no longer generic. Money can be made.
Yeah, money can be made. Yeah, it's all about what money can be made. Yeah, I think these days, I think the whole marketing enterprise might be evil. But
I absolutely agree. When you think about Pfizer advertising, in many countries you can't advertise drugs, and drug companies can't advertise. But in a country like America, the entire TV channels are sponsored by drug companies, and that's such a conflict of interest. People just cannot get honest information, and they're just brainwashed all the time. All these drugs have got such horrendous side effects. And that's sort of always in the small print. So we really, from a World Council of Health point of view, we really want to get people off their drugs, off Big Pharma's drugs, and really back to getting healthy as being healthy as the basis for life, and not assuming that we're all going to get really sick and diseased, and then we're going to take drugs for the rest of our lives. We really need to get to a place where we know we're going to stay healthy our whole lives, because we live in a healthy way.
So what would you say would be a way to get back to a healthy way to live? What would you say
Well, we need to spend more time in nature, a lot of time in nature. We are part of nature, and we've so forgotten that, and we haven't told our children. We've plonked them in the rat race and said, get the best grades at school, get the best grades at university, get the best job, and so we need to really get back into nature, our shoes off. We need to be separated from technology, and we need to give up things that are convenient. We need to start doing things that are inconvenient, like walking to places, and and being patient about things, and slowing down. We need to exercise. We need quiet time. We need sunshine. Contrary to what we've been told, the sun is absolutely the thing that energizes us and supports our immune systems, keeps us in tune with the earth. We need community. We thrive together. We need to take ownership and responsibility. So being empowered and acting in a moral way and in honor is important. There are many things we don't need, so we need to realize that war is not good for us, and it's not necessary. War is a game of rich man's toy soldiers. A rich man's game of toy soldiers. War, nobody in the world wants war. There's no mother, there's no child in the world that wants war. War is simply something that is part of the globalist fun and games, and how they keep us all divided and controlled, and keep profiting from our misery. So yeah, we need lots of joy and laughter, and we need to engage with all the things that we have lost, all the wisdom of our grandparents and their grandparents, and what else? But it really is more. It's we need to get off the drugs. Nobody needs to take drugs, and we need to think, and never for a moment think that drug companies are there for your benefit. They have a very successful business model. Keep people sick, and you'll have customers for life.
It does seem that way.
The interest is not in curing people. Nature can cure us, and we can cure ourselves. I believe you have experience with that too. So there's really many things, but if one can just say, the key is getting back to nature and eating healthily as well. I didn't even include food. What we put into our bodies is so important. The food we eat is so important, and somehow we've been led to believe that we can just treat our bodies like bins, and we can put any manner of junk into them, real fake food, donuts and whatnot, and we don't think about food, the importance of food quality, and provenance. So anything that has a long life, that has sugar added, that is highly that has a lot of chemicals in it is no good. So we need to think about eating produce that comes from the farmer nearby, knowing the farmer, food that's not processed, and
because we have to be closer to the soil. Right?
Yes.
We have to get dirty. We don't get dirty anymore.
And we need to increase the range of food that we eat as well, because, there's lots of herbs and leaves and things that are all natural in our environments that are really, really good for us. And we don't know about them because we just get what they give us in the supermarket. So,
I
yeah.
interviewed an herbalist from the UK, and his daughter. He was 86, and she was in her 50s, and they were on screen together. It was really lovely to have them both there. And he said that he was always interested in herbs when he was a young man, and then he was married, and his little daughter got whooping cough, and she wasn't getting better, and he was looking for a certain herb, and he went outside, and he was walking down the street, and someone's fence, a new fence, part of it had fallen down. So he walked over the fallen down and up the hill, and there at the top of the hill was the bush he needed, with the herb he needed. And so he came back down and, steamed the herb and put a little honey in it and gave it to his daughter, and put slices of garlic with Vaseline on her feet. And within a week, everything was gone. And I do believe that plants are here to heal us. Maybe we're supposed to actually eat them in our diet, but maybe we're actually supposed to use them strategically to heal our lungs and our livers and our brains and our, maybe there are specific plants that we need, and we have lost that.
The knowledge, but there
Yeah.
are people that hold that.
Yes, there
There
are.
are, and that's what we really need to harness at this point. So
Uh-huh.
I agree with you, and I'm on a wonderful learning journey because my background is allopathic health, and in the last few years, I realized that everything I learned was absolute nonsense.
Wow,
You know,
what a
so
thing to learn. Huh?
unfortunately, I was fortunate as a clinician to work in obstetrics, and that's a wonderful area of health. Helping babies be born safely, and so I was very fortunate. But in terms of sorry, I'm losing my train of thought now. Just nostalgically going back to.
Oh, you dictated a poem online that I listened to called Mistakes Were Not Made, and it went viral.
That was a poem written by Margaret Anna Alice, who's
Hmm.
a wonderful collaborator, really. And one of the things that we've realized with World Council for Health is that we so need the creative input from the wonderful creative people, musicians, artists, poets around the world. And so that was one of those wonderful collaborations where Margaret approached me and she said, "Would I read it?" And I did read it.
Yes.
It's not necessarily my, and I did explain at the time, it's not necessarily my approach to things because, it was very much her perspective, but I really valued participating in that, and I think it did reach a lot of people. We have to try lots of different approaches
Hmm.
to raising awareness among people that
To question what we're doing, to question the
Yes,
choices that we're making. Yeah,
yes,
right.
and to question what's gone on in the past few years, and what it all means.
So if someone was going into medicine now at the university, what kind of advice would you give them?
I don't think it's possible at the moment, the way the universities, the way the academic system is structured.
Hmm.
I would say it's probably not possible to come out a good doctor. I think the way the medicine system is structured is really just to make technicians that that follow the big pharma's orders, because big pharma has infiltrated the medical education system. So I would suggest rather, or if you're a newly qualified doctor, go and do a course in naturopathy or complementary medicine, holistic healing, and think about practicing medicine without all the drugs. But if you are a person who's really interested in healing people, not in making money, not in having something that your parents are proud of, and saying my son or daughter is a doctor, if you really are called to heal and you see yourself as a healer, then go and study something that involves natural approaches to health, because that's really where everything is going. That's the direction things are going. People are sick and tired of drugs. They're sick and tired of surgery being the only option. We know now that we're more than just a physical matter that responds to chemistry and incisions. We know that we actually are energy and matter. Mm-hmm. And the energetic part of us is far more interesting in terms of healing than the others. We've kind of been misled in that way by the pharmaceutical industry into thinking that it's just a pill for every ill. But the alternative, that energy healing, is, I would say, that energy and natural medicine is the way forward for us as human beings.
Yeah, well, I agree with you there. I yesterday I went to see someone, and he gave me something called the safe zone, which is we have a certain amount of radio waves in the air, and now we have a lot more of them because of cell phones and because of all kinds of communication that we have that's electronic, and we don't know that what that's doing to our health. And so he's got a gadget that helps to normalize that, and it'll be interesting to see. He gave me 3 of them, so I'll put one in my house, one in my son's house, one in my daughter's house, see if people sleep better. It's interesting. See if people.
It's very important, Tammy. It's very important. I'm well aware of the issue you're talking about. Uh-huh. We have a policy brief called Unregulated Digitalization: the
effects of unregulated digitalization on health and democracy.
Yeah, okay. It touches on the health impact, but it's not just on us; it's on the planet. And I've been shocked because I've acquired one of these. It measures radio frequency radiation. Uh-huh. And I can tell you here, I'm going to turn it on. I won't put the sound on. Yeah. But I'll show you the exposure I have just sitting here in front of me.
Here. Right.
I don't know if you can see that. Okay?
Yes.
So I'm on, that says high or extreme. Now, do you see, if I can just point out that the maximum there, I think, is just sort of almost 3,000, and there it goes up to 4,000.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. But the average is around, less than 10. Okay?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
So it has been shown that a microwatt per meter squared of around 10 causes DNA breaks. Okay, so our bodies are constantly exposed to radiation, and it causes DNA breaks, and we're always having to repair and so on. But with the levels that we are exposed to, bathed all day long with these peaks, and now it's sort of 1,000 or so, and more. So according to this, it's sort of maximum to high to extreme levels of radiation. And I'm Ethernet cabled, so my laptop, my computer that I'm speaking to you on, it's got an Ethernet cable. If I was actually using Wi-Fi, it would be much, much more. So the environmental levels are huge. But at home, I'm Ethernet cabled, and I don't use a mobile phone at home. Mm-hmm. And so when I go home, this meter reads 0.
Okay.
And if I take it outside my house, it goes up. So literally just, if I take it outside, it goes up, because the interiors now, there's no radiation. But I was on a train to London the other day, and the maximum went up to 2.5 million. Now that is way off the scale. It's unbelievable. When you've got all those people in the same room, in one of those compartments, a metal compartment, and everyone downloading on the Wi-Fi and using their phones and their laptops, 2.5 million it went up to, and it went up to thousands on average. So people who are in a commute every day, and they're in those, they're with their AirPods in, and they're on their phones the whole commute, and they're with others, they, or even if you're in your car and using the sat nav and whatever, you are exposed to high levels of radiation, and you are knocking off weeks to years off your life.
Those earpods that don't hook to your phone.
Yes, I had a young girl sitting opposite me. Well, she was probably 19 or 20, and she had the earpods on, and she had the phone in front of her, and I don't know what she was listening to, but just her exposure was 1.5 million. And this is way off. It's unbelievably so extreme. Doesn't really even cover it on this. It is so extraordinarily extreme. So those earpods are just. It's like they're extremely dangerous for health. We don't know the consequences of these dangerous technologies. It's a new technology, and the industry is unregulated, and our authorities are clearly not looking out for us in any way. Right. So we need to look after. So I would recommend to everybody to get one of these and monitor your own exposure. I monitored on planes, and taxi drivers are also hugely exposed all day long because they have their sat navs and all, so when I'm going to a taxi, it's easily 300,000 or so. I was in a cafe in Geneva the other day, and a friend of mine was using a hotspot, 2.5 million as a maximum. It's massive exposures. These are beyond what our, there is countries have got their limits. What some countries are the limits are a maximum or peaks of 100 microwatts per meter squared. We're talking 2.5 million in a single space. So I very much suggest you get one of these. I had in that same train, I said to everybody, would you mind? This is what the reading is now on my meter. Would you mind all turning off your mobile phones, and we can see what happens if And so half the people turned off, and it went down immediately to 200,000, which is still massive at such extreme levels. Yeah. But the point was that we can make these choices. So it can be that we can have carriages which are Wi-Fi free. But the radio frequency radiation is a massive health issue, and it's one that at World Council for Health we are really dedicated to raising awareness of, because we really at a stage where we have to look at root cause of disease. What is causing all the disease in our world? And you might say, oh, well, you can't tell because there's so much, there's no point in even looking. Well, you can strip everything back to basics and say, what are the contributing factors? What could be causing disease? And the absolute unregulated rollout of mobile phone technology, the cell phone masts, the satellites going up into the sky, have a very definite impact on health. Mm-hmm. These vaccines that have been used for a very long time without proper regulation. I'm sure many people would have often thought, why do we have to take a flu vaccine? How do they know a flu's coming, and how do they have the right vaccine for the flu that's coming? All these little common sense things which we've sort of felt uncomfortable about, but not had the answers to, and just done what we've been told. All of these things we need to question now. There's been a bunch of scientists who've been raising the alarm about vaccines being unsafe for children, especially in the huge numbers that they are given, and to very small babies, and also the dangers of 5G and this escalating electrosmog that we're bathed in, and other things. Did you ever hear anyone say vaping is a really good idea and very good for you? No. Where are the studies to show that such things like vaping are actually not damaging to health?
Especially flavored vaping is very bad for you.
It just suddenly popped up, and suddenly everyone's doing it. So, where we really need to look at this and say all of these things could be causing disease. So let's just, perhaps we can't say, we don't know which is worse. So let's just go back to basics and say, no, we don't want any more cell phone towers until you have shown us they are safe. No, we don't want any more vaccines until you have shown us they are safe. And 100-day vaccines or genetic therapies in the guise of vaccines are not safe. It's obvious. Mm-hmm. We need many years of study to show that they are safe. So don't come near us with those injections until you have shown us that they are safe. And the same with the satellites. All of these things we must stop. We must stop the cell phone towers. Do not put them in schools, and do not make classrooms Wi-Fi. We do not know whether they're safe. So we need a far more proactive approach than the way we have been living in the past decades, where we outsource our decision making to the authorities, and they are just politicians at the end of the day, or subject to all sorts of um, yeah.
Well, when I was diagnosed with cancer, and first of all, I was diagnosed with a treatable cancer. They said it was only going to grow a millimeter a year, and it wasn't going to kill me, and I could have my surgery whenever. But after they'd done the initial surgery and they did a biopsy, they found out that actually what I had was a very fast growing and lethal cancer, and that I was going to die within 10 months. And I accepted that prognosis and went home to tell my son. And when I told my son, I had a very good relationship with my son. And when I looked at him and saw the grief in his eyes, I realized that this was the doctor's opinion. It may have been an educated opinion, but nonetheless, it was still an opinion, and that the only one who knew when I was going to die would be God. And we have lost that. We have lost that guide, that spiritual guide that was more than us in every way. And so we defer now to human understanding, in terms of vaccines.
It's so limited.
Yeah. And it's really leading us astray. So, it might be that some of these technologies are okay, but because we have just said yes to all of them, we're not discerning, we're not being careful and giving the due and taking the due diligence that's necessary to understand them completely before we say, okay, well, maybe that's a reasonable conclusion. Maybe that is a reasonable conclusion.
I think we have been disempowered, and we saw it very much during COVID, with people saying, "Oh, well, I don't really understand, so I'll do what I'm told." We need to let people know, if they don't understand, then rather don't do what you're told. If you don't understand, then just wait until you do, until it's in a form that you do understand it, because
Yeah.
it's very important that we take control of our decision making.
I have a different philosophy now. My philosophy is that when I try to be present with whatever is happening with my conversation with you, to be present, to find the next right thing to ask from what we're talking about. So the conversation, I don't know where it's going to go. It's going to go because of I have questions that can, start me up again, but I don't want to be dictated by those preconceived ideas. I want to be open to what I see in the present world. And so to be together with one another and taking our cues from one another and learning from the interactions that we have is going to guide us. It's going to guide us because we are all made in the Spirit of God. And so what's deep inside us and guiding us is good if we would trust it, right? If we could trust it. And I wouldn't say that was how I was raised, but I sat in 250 lectures that my husband gave, and after that, I had a better understanding. So I guess I had an education. I got an education, a useful education, and so I do have all of these things that we're doing now that are so, like you said, there's trust. It's a very strange trust. It's an abdication of responsibility sort of trust, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I have been most concerned about the way people have really, and we did touch on it, handed their children over to the authorities and not stepped in to protect their children. And I know it's a result of a long series of disempowering disempowering process.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a lot of propaganda around, not just around doing the right thing, but children, being able to infect granny and so on, with COVID, and so needed to be. But there was never any evidence that COVID was dangerous for children, and there was never any evidence that the COVID genetic injections were safe for children.
Right, that's for sure.
So it's been so alarming to see people just allow these shots to go into their children, and so especially with tomorrow being Easter, I don't know when you're going to put this out, but just thinking about Jesus and about the way he stood up for truth and justice, that was what he was doing, as he was standing up to the authorities at the time and the bankers and the moneylenders, and that was what he was doing. And he, in my opinion, never wished us to worship him. He wished us to follow his footsteps. He was saying, don't put up with this, stand up for truth. The truth will set you free. And it seems like it's that desire to be good that has been exploited by those who seek to disempower and control us. And so people who are particularly religious have not necessarily realized that their role at this time is really to save the children, is really to stand up for truth and justice, just like Jesus was doing. And in my opinion, Jesus was he doesn't wish to remain on that cross and be remembered for the 2000th time on the cross. He wishes to be remembered as the man who stood up for truth and justice, stood up for humanity, and wanted us to follow him. And so, I feel great sadness really about Easter tomorrow, and just another day. The day Good Friday is not a Good Friday. To me, it's a very bad Friday, the day when the most terrible things happened to a man, as an example to everybody else to do what you're told, or else. And so, to me, it's a time to really take Jesus down off the cross and say, thank you for setting such a great example to us. And now we're going to follow, and we're going to stand up for truth and justice, because there's no time like right now to do this.
Well, time for a redemption.
Danger,
Yeah, time for redemption. But time for the humbling that has to come first. Yeah.
Yeah. And in actual fact, how can Jesus save our children now, when the military-industrial complex has our children in their sights? We have to save our children.
Yeah, it's our responsibility.
Yeah. So I hope it's okay that I shared that rather personal perspective on these things. But
I love that. That's what makes my podcast real to me, are those things. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure to meet you. And if you do have other people who you think need to speak, I'd be happy to do that. And we'll see where those things go.
Thanks very much, Tammy.
My pleasure.